Hello there, renters of Toronto. Welcome to the Thunderdome of tenancy, where the rent is steeper than Drake's ego and evictions are more common than sightings of a sober mayor at a Raptors game. This vibrant metropolis, known for its stunning skyline and questionable public transit, also boasts a cutthroat rental market. Finding a decent flat here is like finding a decent politician. Nearly impossible. But fear not, dear renter. Ever wondered how to get evicted in the most hilarious ways possible? Well, you're in the right place. Let's dive into the comedic chaos of Toronto's rental market. Let's dive in, shall we? Rent, damage and unwanted guests. Sounds like the title of a bad sitcom, right? Let's explore the wacky world of tenant troubles and landlord headaches, not paying rent, trashing the place and harbouring a zoo's worth of unauthorised occupants. First up, the cardinal sin. This one's a no-brainer, folks. Your landlord isn't running a charity. They expect their hard-earned Canadian dollars and they expect them on time. Next, we have. This doesn't just mean ripping down walls and installing a jacuzzi in your living room, although that's a surefire way to get evicted. We're talking neglecting basic upkeep, causing damage through sheer negligence, or, using your oven as a storage unit for your extensive collection of vintage hockey equipment. Lastly, the issue of. Think subletting your place on Airbnb without permission, or turning your one bedroom into a hostel for your backpacking buddies from Europe. Landlords get understandably twitchy when they discover a rotating cast of strangers using their property as a crash pad. So, there you have it, the holy trinity of eviction. Avoid these at all costs, unless, of course, you enjoy the thrill of a forced relocation. Landlords, those mythical creatures often portrayed as Scrooge McDuck-esque figures hoarding piles of gold, also have their side of the story. Imagine, if you will, a landlord named Bob. Bob's not a bad guy, just a regular Canadian chap trying to make a living. He rents out his basement apartment to help pay the mortgage and fund his Tim Hortons addiction. Enter Chad, Bob's new tenant. Chad, a self-proclaimed influencer with a penchant for neon tracksuits and avocado toast, promises to be the perfect tenant. Fast forward 3 months, and Chad's Instagram feed is littered with photos of him living his best life, all while Bob's bank account remains emptier than a politician's promise. Chad, you see, has decided that rent is just a social construct, an archaic system designed to oppress the free-spirited. Bob, meanwhile, is starting to sweat. He needs that rent money to pay his own bills and stuff. This, my friends, is a tale as old as time itself. Tenants who treat rent as an optional expense, and landlords left tearing their hair out, wondering why they ever decided to enter the rental market in the first place. Grab your popcorn, because these stories are more dramatic than a soap opera. Let's hear some of the most outrageous excuses for not paying rent. The joys of being a landlord in Toronto. It's not just about collecting rent and fixing leaky faucets, It's also about navigating the often bizarre requests of your tenants. But my emotional support peacock needs a garden. Yes, you heard that right. Or the one who insisted on painting their entire apartment black because, and I quote, "it helps me channel my inner goth." Landlords, bless their souls, have seen it all. From requests for pet tigers, apparently hypoallergenic ones exist, to demands for a personal chef specializing in gluten-free, sugar-free, taste-free kale chips, nothing is off limits. While some requests are harmless and even amusing, others can be downright outrageous, pushing the boundaries of what's reasonable and legal. It's enough to make even the most patient landlord question their life choices. Remember, folks, there's a fine line between making a reasonable request and demanding the impossible. And if you're thinking of bringing home a peacock, you might want to check your lease agreement first. Just saying. Subletting, the art of renting out your rented space, can be a tempting prospect, especially in a city like Toronto where rent costs more than a small island nation. But beware, dear renter, for the path of subletting is fraught with peril. Imagine this. You decide to rent out your spare room for a little extra cash. You find a seemingly normal person online, someone who enjoys long walks on the beach and quoting Shakespeare. Perfect, right? Wrong? It turns out your new roommate is actually a contestant on a reality TV show called Extreme Couponing Hoarders Edition. Your once pristine apartment is now a labyrinth of 2-for-1 deals and expired coupons, and your landlord is less than impressed. Subletting without permission is a big no-no in the world of renting. It can lead to all sorts of headaches, from property damage to legal disputes. So, unless you want to end up on an episode of Landlord Nightmares, it's best to play by the rules and get your landlord's consent before inviting a camera crew and a dozen strangers into your home. When your parties rival a Glastonbury festival, ever thought your living room could host a music festival? Let's see how some tenants turn up the volume and the eviction notices. Imagine this, it's 3 a.m. and your upstairs neighbours are having a quiet wine and cheese night. The only problem? Their definition of quiet involves a live mariachi band, a tap dancing troupe, and enough bass to make your teeth rattle. Noise complaints are a common cause of tension between neighbours and a surefire way to get on your landlord's bad side. Remember, folks, walls in Toronto apartments are thinner than a politician's excuse. So, if you're planning on throwing a party that would make Keith Richards blush, do everyone a favour and rent out a dedicated event space. Your neighbours and your landlord will thank you. So, you've ignored all the friendly advice and managed to land yourself in hot water with your landlord. Maybe you decided to start a goat cheese making business in your living room, or perhaps you've developed a habit of paying rent in monopoly money. Whatever the reason, the dreaded eviction process has begun. First come the warning letters, those ominous envelopes slipped under your door with threats of legal action. Ignore these at your peril, my friend. Next up, the landlord might decide to take you to court. This is where things can get messy and expensive. Picture yourself in a courtroom facing a judge who's heard it all and a landlord who's at the end of their rope. Not exactly a recipe for a good time. The eviction process is a long and arduous journey, one that's best avoided altogether. So, do yourself a favour and try to stay on your landlord's good side. Trust me, it's far less stressful than facing the wrath of the legal system. It's like Law and Order, but with more rent and less order. Let's explore the legal battles that make eviction a spectator sport. Well, this is awkward. You've officially joined the ranks of Toronto's evicted tenants. Don't worry, it happens to the best of us. Or well, maybe not the best, but you get the point. First things first, don't panic. An eviction notice doesn't mean you need to pack your bags and move into a cardboard box, unless you've always dreamed of a minimalist lifestyle. Take a deep breath, grab a cup of Tim Hortons, it's the Canadian way, and read the notice carefully. It will outline the reasons for your eviction and the amount of time you have to either remedy the situation or vacate the premises. If you believe the eviction is unjustified, you can try to fight it. But be warned, this is a legal battle that requires time, money, and a good lawyer or a good paralegal. If you decide to vacate, start looking for a new place ASAP. Toronto's rental market is a jungle, and you don't want to be caught empty-handed. It's like getting a surprise party invitation, but with more stress. Let's navigate the next steps with a touch of humour. So, you've survived the eviction process and emerged, slightly bruised, but not broken. Now comes the fun part, finding a new place to call home in the concrete jungle that is Toronto. The good news is, you've learned from your mistakes, hopefully. You now know that paying rent on time, respecting your neighbours, and refraining from turning your apartment into a biohazard zone are all good things. The bad news is, you've got an eviction on your record, which can make finding a new landlord who's willing to take a chance on you as difficult as finding a decent bagel in this city. Seriously, why are they all so sweet? Be prepared to explain the situation honestly and openly. Offer references from previous landlords, if you can, and be upfront about your commitment to being a model tenant. Finding a new place after an eviction can be a challenge, but it's not impossible. Time to start fresh and maybe not repeat the same hilarious mistakes. Let's find a new home with a smile. So you want to stay put? A guide to not getting evicted in Toronto? It's like a survival guide, but funnier. Let's learn how to keep your landlord happy and your eviction notice free. Pay your rent on time. Treat your apartment with respect. No, that doesn't mean sacrificing a goat to the real estate gods. Don't throw parties that would make Bacchus blush, and for the love of all that is holy, leave the peacocks at the zoo. Remember, renting in Toronto doesn't have to be a constant battle for survival. By following these simple tips, you can avoid the stress, expense, and sheer awkwardness of eviction. Now go forth and be the best darn tenant Toronto has ever seen. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, follow and share to our channel for more great content.